Speaking today to you about quad charts for me is an exciting opportunity to talk about how in Australia we actually engage in the defence sector, and it's using a tool called quad charts. Now, quad charts isn't anything, all it is basically a way to communicate your business on a page. So basically a little bit about myself before we launch into quad charts. My name is Audra. I'm the CEO of the Defence Teaming Centre. My job is through our organisations to connect companies into opportunities within the defence supply chains here in Australia. We also develop companies as well to meet the needs of the defence sector. And just like NZDIA, we actually advocate on behalf of industry to inform the development of defence industry policy. Supporting me is a really fabulous team of people who industry facilitators. We have event managers because we also do a lot of events as part of our connecting activities. Looks like I've got a huge team, but in fact what I've done is I've surrounded myself by a very clever team of part-time people, which means if we put them all together, we've actually still got a very small full-time team presence. So let's talk about quad charts. Quad charts here in Australia is what we use to basically engage our customers and allow us to focus our conversation when we're talking in the defence sector about our companies. It's simply a plan on a page, so to speak. So it comes from lean methodology where we keep things simple all in one place. In a previous life, I used to be the AIC manager for Lockheed Martin's Combat System Program, and I used to have a lot of companies come to me giving me copies of their company's capability statements, their pamphlets and so forth. When I attended trade shows, I'd often walk away with huge piles of paraphernalia, which made it very difficult for me as a sourcing manager to actually find the companies and the right information that I needed to be able to make an informed decision about my procurement activities. And I was always grateful then that in Australia we had a simple tool called a quad chart. So a quad chart basically is we use it as a key marketing document in the defence industry. I think it's nuanced to the defence sector here in Australia. You go to any other sector, no one really knows what we're talking about. Like I said, it's a capability statement on a page. We use it at trade shows, conferences, business-to-business meetings and websites. It's a way to grab attention. It's a way to have a talking point and provide a snapshot of your business. If you're new to networking and if you're not confident in networking and engaging, a quad chart can be a really effective way for you to actually feel supported in your networking activities because it's got all the key information there in one location, and you can use it as prompts to help you have that conversation with a potential customer. So a quad chart, I mean, what I've got there is a very basic template of a quad chart. And if you go to our booth, you should be able to download a copy of that quad chart template from there. The important thing to understand is that this is actually just a template, okay? So this is a basic idea of where to start in getting the basic information down. Over time, you will move these things around. You will introduce colour and pictures to help your quad chart sing, so to speak, as I often call it. So we obviously always want to be able to have our company name very prominent, as well as our contact details very prominent on the quad chart. My advice to companies is to actually try to include some personalised contact details. Because usually if you're going to be having a conversation with a sourcing manager or someone specific at a trade show or part of a meeting, if you're relying on handing them your business cards separately to your quad chart, chances are that's going to get lost. So you always try to put your personalised details on the quad chart. Now, also a tip is that sometimes the quad chart can be filed by the sourcing managers for weeks or months on end. And referred to later, and sometimes you may have a changeover of staff in your organisation. So just to make sure your business doesn't lose that opportunity to receive that valuable call from a potential customer, Always include a generic email address as well, or perhaps a generic phone number as well. That way, you know, if your business development person happens to leave the organisation, you've got some kind of continuity in being able to engage your future customers. Obviously, you want to be able to include a brief description or summary of your company. Now, remember what I've said there is it's got to be brief. So in the last slide, and I'll just flick back to it just to give you a couple of examples. You know, there's a couple of examples there from Defence Teaming Centre members who've generously given us permission to show their quad charts. You can see that they actually use colour, they use pictures, they use graphics for their quad chart. But you can also see that there isn't a huge amount of information. So whilst you, like in terms of text and words, so whilst you've got a template there that is kind of singing at you and calling you to put a whole plethora of words down there, don't fall into that trap. It needs to be a brief description, and it needs to be about your company and what it can do for your customer. One of the key things you need to understand for a quad chart is because it's a plan on a page and because it's done by you, you can actually tailor your quad chart for each conversation, market, or opportunity which you are pursuing. And that means there might be nuances about your business, your description, certain things about your company that you might want to tweak or change depending on each conversation that you're having. And that's one of the beautiful things about a quad chart. Some companies have a lot of marketing paraphernalia. As I said, I'd walk away from trade shows with, you know, all these beautiful brochures of companies. They're expensive, they get printed, and they're very difficult to keep update and keep relevant and change for target audiences. A quad chart is simple, one page, and you can change it as quickly as you want. Remember, it's the conversation starter, it's not the entire conversation. So a summary of your company, and include a picture of your company as well. You know, you can a picture of the size of your company, some of the products that you can put in there. You know, there's all sorts of things that you can put in there. Let's talk about capabilities. So most companies, and in fact all companies who want to get into the defence sector, we strongly encourage them to register their details on the Industry Capability Network Gateway, the ICN Gateway service. And through that process, you have to know your capability statement and be able to define and communicate exactly what is it that your company does, what are your core capabilities. And so that's where you put it down on this part of the quad chart. Interestingly, with your capabilities, you have to be succinct and your capabilities have to be relevant to the person you are actually having a conversation with. So always do your research before you're having a conversation, before you're actually networking, to try and understand what is it the company or the potential target opportunity might want or see in your business, and try to flesh out those details as part of listing your capabilities. Remember, the capabilities is not a complete description of the size of your buildings and every detail of machine that you have on your shop floor. It's actually trying to communicate what is your company capable of doing, how do you take the assets that you have in your business and you convert that to creating value for a potential customer. One thing I will say is that getting the words right on your capability statement, in fact, on any part of your quad chart, takes a lot of practice. You can expect to wordsmith, tweak, change, and continue to evolve your quad chart over time. I know with the Defence Teaming Centre's quad chart, I'm probably often changing words, enhancing the way we communicate key messages, because as our business evolves and the longer I stay in the business, I'm learning more and more, and I want to be able to articulate that better through my quad chart. So I'm often making changes to our how we communicate our capabilities. So I can suggest you'll probably be prepared to, or need to be prepared to do that as well. Your key discriminators. So this is where, if you know your business well, if you've gone through the process of logging your capability statement on the ICN, you should have gone through a process of trying to understand what your key discriminators are, because That needs to come out in how you're promoting yourself on the ICN, but also how you promote yourself and your business generally. Now, usually in small businesses, it's normally the business owner who's also the business development person. If you happen to have a separate business development person, often I find that they are salespeople, and they're not as versed as I would expect to see in being able to clearly communicate what is so unique about your business compared to your competition. So as we're stepping through each of the areas of the quad chart, you should be starting to see how much homework and prep work you need to know about understanding your business before you can actually start completing each of these areas. What you should be seeing now is that to have completed a quad chart, you should have done some kind of competitor analysis, looking at who your competitors are, what's unique about you compared to them. You should have done a bit of research about what is your target market, what are your target customers, what is it that you're actually pursuing, because that information will help you document a targeted message for your audience. So with your discriminators, you have to be very, very particular, because remember, if you're working or producing a commodity product or a commodity supply, you've got a very competitive market. And so you need to be able to define what is it about you that is different to everyone else. Why would someone want to do business with you and not your competitor? Are you trying to displace someone and have your business move into a supply chain by displacing the competition? So there's a lot of answers there that you need to give consideration of when you're trying to put your discriminators down and make them sing from the page. We also like to understand who your key customers are. This is really important because as a sourcing manager, if you're new to defence or if you're existing in defence, and I can see that you have customers who are already companies within defence, like you might have other primes or something, that tells me that you're accustomed to doing work in defence. It also tells me that you're accustomed to going through a supplier assessment process, and in fact you have passed a supplier assessment process. So I therefore can make a decision that you should be reasonably easy to do business with. If you're brand new to defence and you list your key customers there, perhaps you might be delivering into Santos, the oil and gas sector, BHP. It tells me that, again, I know oil and gas and the mining sectors, they actually have stringent quality control, supplier assessment process and supplier delivery requirements. So listing those key customers, even if you're not in defence, tells me again that there's a reasonable likelihood you have got what it takes to be able to become a defence supplier. So that's why it's really important to have those customers listed there. We also like to understand who your key markets are and whether they're local, international, or what you're actually pursuing. That tells us how diverse your business is, and so does your key customers as well. One thing we don't like to see in the defence sector is that companies who are wholly engaged 100% to defence. Now, don't get me wrong, that actually does happen. I do have a number of members here in the DTC who defence comprises 100%, pretty well 90% of their work, but of that 90% defence work, maybe 60% of it is export and 40% of it is domestic work. In that 40% domestic work, some of it might be across the maritime sector and across the aerospace sector. So immediately you can see the diversification. And what that tells me as a sourcing manager is that your business is diversified. That means you have some kind of financial stability. Should there be a key change to one of your customers, it's not going to cause your business to implode. So that's why we ask for that kind of information. Then we talk about quality approvals and awards. It's really helpful for you to identify what your certifications and approvals are. So if you're AS9100 or ISO 9001 certified, put that down, because there's some of the basic certifications that we require for companies to get into defence, as are the safety certifications as well. You might have NATO accreditation or whatever the sector or operation that you actually have. Your business may have received some awards recently as well. You might have been awarded, Exporter of the Year or something. So put the year down and the award or the accolade that you've been acknowledged for. It tells a sourcing manager that you, again, have gone through some kind of assessment process. There's been a judging process that has seen exactly what it is you're capable of doing. So that's a really good message to include on there. Now, one of the things I often say to people when they're putting their quad charts together is don't be frightened to use colour and to use graphics and to use pictures. They often say, a picture says 1,000 words. Well, it's true. And we all have different styles of communicating and learning. You've got the kinesthetic and you've got the auditory. And I can't remember all of them, sorry, but all I know is that I myself, being a person with very short attention span, I speed read a lot of things. I look for pictures to help me read things very quickly. And so when it comes to your quad chart, be very savvy about how you can use pictures to help communicate your message. Try to reduce the number of words there so it's easy for someone to digest your quad chart. When it talks about customers, you can actually use your customers' logos and have them there instead of actually listing all of your customers. Just a word of warning though, if you are going to use your customers' logos, you need to get your customers' permission to actually use their logo. You don't want to find yourself in a inadvertent breach of a trademark or brand copyright. So it doesn't hurt just to send an email to your customer and give them a copy of the quad chart and say, with your permission, we would like to use your brand on our quad chart. Most cases, I haven't seen any companies push back and say no. Same with your key markets, what you're doing, perhaps the project. So list the projects there. One thing I will say in the defence sector, if you are going for a defence opportunity and on your quad chart, you are going to be listing all of your defence customers and the various projects or defence projects that your company is engaged in, be very careful about that information, because where that information goes can potentially make you a security target, and no one really wants that. So it's a fine line between giving out too much information and making yourself a vulnerable cybersecurity target, and giving out enough information that will enable you to have a really meaningful dialogue with a potential customer. So that's only something that you can assess on each and every case. Just to give you a guide, that's the Defence Teaming Centre's quad chart. So clearly it looks nothing like the template which I've just put up. My business is a service delivery based business. We're a not-for-loss organisation, and so it's a bit difficult for me to put down exactly all of the key things that I need to do for a quad chart like a typical business would, yet I've still managed to be able to put a quad chart together there for you. So you can see there that we've got the contact details down the bottom. We don't have a personalised contact detail because our quad chart as an organisation, we've decided to make it enduring. I work in different markets to what you guys do, and so having a generic contact details is appropriate for us. We've used colour, we've used some imagery just to highlight, we've got some imagery of some events that we've hosted in the past to give the audience an idea of the scale and magnitude of events that we typically put together. We've got some other imagery there from us engaging with Department of Defence undertaking a site visit. So that's, there's some pictures placed there which enable us to basically say, look, this is examples of what we do. I've listed our services there, our discriminators, our accreditations. For us, we're Defence Industry Security Program accredited. And we've also listed who our prime supporters and sponsors are. And in fact, that's actually an old quad chart, because just recently we've just had Naval Group sign up as a prime supporter, and their logo should be on there soon as well. So you can see how using graphics and colour is really important and actually enables you to communicate your message more clearly. As the Defence Teaming Centre, I have staff who often join us and join our team who don't have a huge defence background. Probably sometimes when they join us, they don't know a huge amount about the DTC, and they find using the quad chart to go out to trade shows and communicate to people what we do, having the quad chart as that conversation base. They can have that in their hand, they can talk to someone. It actually acts as a prompt and enables them to more confidently engage potential members. So quad chart tips: when you're putting your quad chart together, focus on content first, okay? So get the wording right, get the concept right, get the messaging right. So this is going to be much harder than what you actually think it's going to be. So don't be surprised if you labour over this for days and weeks, and don't be surprised if you put it down and you come back 2 weeks later and you look at that and go, oh my God, who said that? No, I need to change all of that. And certainly that's what I do. I'm sure it drives my team mad, but it's because every day we're learning more and more about our businesses. We're learning more about the market in which we're operating. And so it's not unusual for us to want to change and update that quad chart. Once you've got that wording right, then look at your design. Okay, so if you're thinking, gee, Audra's really good at PowerPoint, she's put all that graphics together, wow, how clever. No. No. For me to put something like that together on PowerPoint like that probably would have taken me, several solid days labouring over PowerPoint, fiddling with graphics and so forth. I think I paid a couple of $100 to a graphic design artist, gave them the base. Gave them the base document, gave them some imagery and said, hey, can you turn this into something snazzy using that content? And that's what we got back. So, I think it cost us about $300 to do that, which was really good. And we were able to get a file that we can edit as well and make minor edits to. That cost us just a little bit extra. But in my opinion, it was a really good investment, very good use of my time. I didn't have to sit there mucking around with graphic design software. Someone else did it, and I've got a really quality looking document. And so how you present your business adds to the perception you create when you engage someone. And so how your quad chart appears adds to that whole perception that someone is forming about you when they start engaging and communicating with you. With your quad chart, be succinct and keep it simple. Now, to all the business owners out there, I know your business is your baby. I know you know everything there is to know about your business, and I know there is a lot of information you would love to be able to share about your business. Please hold back, okay? You really need to be succinct. Nothing is worse than seeing a huge plethora of words on a page and then asking your target customer to try and read it and understand who you are and what you're trying to do. Remember, if you go to a trade show and you're trying to engage someone, I would have maybe 15, 20 meetings a day with potential companies. And so that meant I'd have to read those quad charts. You can imagine by the end of day 3 at a trade show, speaking to 10 or 15 companies a day, how my attention span, remember I have a very short attention span. You remember what is the likelihood I'm going to remember everything about your quad chart and have the time to focus on understanding exactly who it is that you are. So you have to be succinct, it has to be punchy, and it has to be simple. Remember, this is the conversation starter. This is not the only opportunity you're going to have to engage your customer. This is going to get their attention, and this is them, you're wanting to get them to say, we need to make a time to have another deeper, meaningful conversation. That's the objective. Do not use motherhood statements. Do not say our quality is second to none. If you're going to talk about your quality, you should be able to put up a statistic. For the last 6 months, our quality has been 100%. For the last 6 months, we've delivered to all of our major customers 100% on time, on budget. Be very specific, be objective. We have an amazing capability. We can do anything. We are a one-stop engineering shop. Really? It's not making you sound any different to anyone else. All right. So you have to think very carefully about the wording that you're choosing. Again, I've said it already, use images where possible. I actually had one company, they make a large range of various small products and componentry, and they wanted to be able to demonstrate the range of finesse that they have on very small components to very large components. And so what they did is they included the imagery of all of their product range as the border on their quad chart. It was actually a very clever idea, because by using that imagery as the border, every product, whilst it was a small thumbnail, you could actually drill down on that and see, you know, the range of their manufacturing capability. So that was actually a really clever way to communicate. Of course, you can go overboard with images. If you're going to use images, make sure that they're good quality images. Make sure they're up to date. You don't want to be putting, you know, a photo of your workshop that's 20 years old, 10 years old even. Even your personal profile photos, if you're going to include your personal profile photo, you actually want it to be current. So, for example, even in my, as an example, my LinkedIn photo, I routinely update that every 2 or 3 years, because unfortunately we're all getting older, we're all changing, gravity's kicking in, and so that all needs to be updated as well. Because you want to be able to ensure that you're managing the expectation, then the right expectation with the customer who you're trying to engage. And again, customise your quad chart for each opportunity or trade show. If you're going to be going to a maritime trade show, then talk more about the maritime projects that you've been engaged in, or the maritime customers that you've had. If you're actually going to, I mean, you can use this tool in any other sector. So if you're going to go to an agricultural trade show, or if you're going to go to an oil and gas trade show, you can still use this quad chart. Okay, so you then customise that quad chart for the various market sectors that you might be pursuing. So just to give you a bit of an example of what some of the quad charts are. So as I said, you know, Williams Metal Fabrication, small company here in South Australia, member of DTC. They've used imagery to highlight who their customers are, what their certifications are. You know, use of coloured dot points to highlight what their discriminators are. You know, it changes for everyone. Contact details are there, very easy to see, very effective, and very targeted as to what it is they're actually looking for. Toolcraft Australia, again, same company overview, what the in-house capabilities are, some really good imagery there. Now, Toolcraft, what they did is, it's a two-sided quad chart. So you can do a double-sided quad chart. So that's what Toolcraft have did when they actually got theirs graphically designed. There's a front and a back to their quad chart. Some companies will also have their quad chart printed on a cardstock. So it's not A4, I think it's 80 GSM, which is what standard paper is. They get something that's a little heavier. So when it's in a pile of papers, it's easier to find, so that's handy. Some companies also do it as an A5 piece as well. So I know some guys in the DTC membership, they prefer to use an A5 portfolio when they're going to trade shows, because that's a tablet size. So they chose to have their quad charts done up as A5 because it would fit into their tablet portfolio. It was a lot easier for them to carry around. So they would do that, which was quite effective. I also encourage people to always have a PDF version of your quad chart on your phone or on your tablet. And that's because you just never know where you're going to be. You know, in the old days when we were allowed to travel and we used to sit in airline lounges, you might bump into someone, you start talking about your business. You know, you could whip out your quad chart and quickly show them, and then you can quickly email it as well. That's one of the beautiful things about a quad chart. So a bit of a tip, if you're at a trade show and you're trying to get someone's details, they don't have their card, you can pop out your quad chart and you can say, well, tell you what, how about I email it to you now? What's your email address? And you've got their email address straight away and you can send the quad chart to them. Happy days. Those tips are included in another session that we often do, so I don't want to give away too much in this session because I'm pretty limited on time today. So another example of use of colour and so forth. That's Graham Fry. He's put a photo of himself there, his customers and so forth. So, you know, great use of the quad charts and colours, key tubing, electrical. And what you can see with this one, actually, key tubing and electrical in the background of their quad chart, they have actually put some of their products, and on the other side of their quad chart, again, some more photos of what they actually do and their manufacturing capability. And it was this company that the version of their quad chart that I saw had the border of all of their products around the border. And I don't know why they went away from that, because I actually particularly liked it, but this is the version they're now running with. So just to try and wrap up and reinforce some of their key points, refine your content and get that sorted before you go off to design. Share your quad chart with your team, some customers who you trust and value, to get some feedback. If you're NZDIA members, I'm sure if you were to show your quad chart to Jenny, she would give you some feedback to help you put your best foot forward. And access some mentoring support. You'll find, you know, when you're a small business and you reach out to a large business to ask for advice, in most cases, in my experience, the larger companies typically do provide that advice to smaller companies. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And I also know NZTE is doing a lot of work with its small business and industry, and I'm sure they'll also provide that advice as well. I say get some professional help with designing an impactful quad chart, but don't go straight for an impact. You know, don't go for that gold-plated quad chart immediately, because you've got to get your wording right. Like I said, for us here in Australia, the creative content, only $300 or $400, it's not huge. Certainly a really good investment. Yeah, getting professional photography of your imagery. You'll see that the examples I showed you, the photography that was used on their products was actually professional imagery. And just remember, you never know where your quad chart's going to end up. So whilst I might be the sourcing manager that you're having the conversation with, I'll often return back to my team, and then I will share those quad charts with the engineering design team, the head of engineering, or sourcing managers in other sections. It could be emailed, so you just never know where it's going to go. And so that's why I talk about, if you're going to be listing every defence project that you've been working on and defence customer, collectively, that could be sensitive information, so you need to have a consideration for that. But I often say to my DTC members is that my job is to make sure my members put their best foot forward. And so we will often tell them to have a professional presence. And yeah, you may be nervous. Networking may not be your thing, and growing your business is tough. But if you don't look, feel, smell big, no one's going to take you seriously. So the image that you present is the image and perception that people have of you before you've really officially engaged. And so your quad chart is the beginning of that. So take that into consideration. And often I find with my members is that a well professionally produced quad chart really puts those members on a really good standing to have a more confident and engaging conversation with a target market. Just watching time. What primes are looking for? They're looking for a tailored quad chart to the opportunity. Very focused capability statement. ICN Gateway have sessions and information sessions available on how to put capability statements together. Primes are looking for how you can relieve their pain points. They're looking for your track record, looking for market diversity. We spoke about that. Do you have any partnerships? Are you partnering with other organisations to produce capacity and scope to better deliver on a project? And how does your business create value? So next steps, complete your quad chart, everyone. The templates there are available. Register your business on the ICN Gateway. I strongly encourage you to do that. Measure your delivery performance, because again, you'll need some objective quality evidence to be able to have some really engaging conversations. And develop a business strategy for your business, and allocate resources and budget to that, and start your BD activity. If you've liked what we've covered off very quickly today, it's just a taster. We are doing some work with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. We're dealing, I'm delivering, I think it's quarterly, we're delivering Introduction to Australia's Defence Market, which is a 90-minute session. The next date for that one is the 22nd of February. September and then February. And then for those companies who have done the Introduction to Defence Market, they're allowed to enrol in the Preparing for Success in the Australian Defence Market, which is actually a full day. I've got fully day there written, obviously. Full day session workshop, and that's something that I am delivering in partnership with my Shipley Wins. So we do that in partnership and delivery to New Zealand industry. The Shipley tools and approach is what's used by the defence primes, and so we are now going out to industry and sharing that with SMEs to help SMEs better engage in the defence market. So for contact details about those sessions, contact Graham Soloway at New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. Those dates and times might change as we get closer depending on what activities are occurring. Despite me being in Australia, fortunately to technology, we've still been able to continue delivering these sessions, and I think so far they've been quite successful. So keep an eye out for those sessions. If you've got questions and answers, I'll have the answers, you'll have the questions. Visit our website and follow us on LinkedIn. A lot of information about the DTC and the Australian Defence Market and some great companies who are involved in the Australian Defence Market is available from our LinkedIn site. So pop onto LinkedIn, search Defence Teaming Centre, follow us and follow our webpage. So that's me. I'm just going to try and navigate back to the main screen. Here I am. So I don't know if there's any questions, if anyone had a question or what actually happens now. Back over to you, I think, Jenny.
So hi, Audra. So I thought we'd ask a couple of questions. So what we have done is hopefully if everybody who's watching, and everybody's watching, I'm watching you. So I know if you don't do what I ask you to do. So you know me well enough to know just do as you're told. If you can all go to the polls, on the right-hand side, you've got chat, polls and people. Hopefully we have some questions. So let's start with the first one. If you are an Australian business on this call, do you use a quad chart? So it'll be interesting to see, Audra, who we've got in the room, which might help you frame some of the questions around what the differences might be. So if everybody can answer, if you're an Australian business, do you use a quad chart? Another question, are you an Australian business? Yes, no. And then there's some more poll questions. Are you a New Zealand business? Are you aware of the trade and enterprise support for exporting? And finally, for everybody, do you have a quad chart? So we'll and then we're on to the drinking one. So, so if everybody can answer the question. So in the meantime, have you had any conversations with any of your Australian members about whether they've started using their quad charts in New Zealand and how they're getting on with them?
Yeah, I have never had anyone come back to me and say how good or bad it is. It's one of those assumed ways into assumed tools of doing business. What I am having is primes come to me and say, I can't believe the amount of companies when I say, where's your quad chart? They look at me with a blank expression. So what we have here in Australia is the primes use the term so much that for them, it is a key communication tool. They ask for a quad chart. And so that should be a tip or a heads up to anyone. If you want to engage into the sector, get a quad chart, because that's what the primes, it's going to be the first question they will ask you. So get that sorted. I also have primes coming back to me and they will say, just had a meeting with XYZ. Are they a member of yours? Because if they are, their quad chart is atrocious. So I feel like a mum to my members, because my job is to make sure my members put their best foot forward. And so when I get that kind of feedback, I've got to go out and see my member and sort of say, well, the principal's here. We need to do some remedial work. It's in your best interest. And so that's what we do. And I'm sure, Jenny, you'd probably do the same thing with your members. And if you got that feedback about your members, you'd almost be mortified. So, but it's, to me, that is an indication of how much our industry, particularly the primes, are wanting to invest in SMEs. You know, that prime or that sourcing manager could have just taken that and gone, what a terrible company, not doing business with them ever again, and just moved them aside. But we have that relationship with the primes where they'll provide that feedback, and now I can work with that business and help that business to improve. So, you know, I do believe that there is a commitment out there within the community of wanting to help develop that small to medium-sized sector. So, you know, as a small business, don't be frightened if you're having a meeting with a prime to ask them for feedback. If you've had a pitch meeting, ask them at the end, how did my pitch go? Do you have any feedback for me? Here's my quad chart. I would be interested in your feedback. Everyone has a different perception of what good looks like, and just because I say it looks good doesn't mean someone else is going to say it looks good. And you've got to learn to take the pieces of feedback and work out what's going to work for you.
So we've been, you and I have had a few conversations over the past few weeks about how we're actually going to work connecting Australia and New Zealand SMEs together, so that together they potentially could pitch to the prime. So I think it'll be an interesting one for us to look at doing, as to whether we can start doing the matching kit. So I've just been, while you were talking, chatting to our chairman, Andrew Ford, and we think we might look at launching a number 8 wire chart. So New Zealand, if you say to New Zealand businesses about, you know, number 8 wire mentality, which is that innovation, that secret sauce, the things they can do. I think if we position ours to sit alongside yours, we potentially could say, here's how the combination of the two types of businesses from the two countries can then better deliver into New Zealand and or into Australia or somewhere else in the world. So
yeah, I think just quickly, if we've got the time, Jenny, I think New Zealand industry are in a real fortunate position if they're trying to enter into the Australian defence market, because for Australian industry capability purposes, New Zealand industry are regarded as Australian, and so it is possible for New Zealand industry to engage into the Australian market and be given a degree of preferential decision making, because a prime must demonstrate commitment to engaging Australian industry. And so I think the more New Zealand industry can do to, you know, assume these tools and assimilate similarity in how they engage with the existing Australian market, it actually better supports their efforts in winning work in the Australian market.
Yeah, no, it's good. So one of the things Audra gets is our New Zealand tenders platform, which is sort of all of government. But we have seen companies like Babcock International leading the charge. Now they're allowed to post their projects up. They come under the category of a New Zealand sourcing agency. That's what it says on GET, which means that businesses interested in supplying to Babcock, who then supply into defence, is an option. So I think anybody who's listening, who's supplying into government, I would encourage them to look at how can you use GETS to help reach out further to start getting the SMEs connected together.
And just, I mentioned the ICN portal as well. So I know New Zealand industry have access to the ICN portal. All the major primes here in Australia are using that portal as their primary way of engaging industry. So get registered on that portal and get yourself logged to receive updates, and that's where you'll receive updates on various Australian programs.
Yeah. So actually, while we're talking about ICN Gateway, there's a platform called BenchOn, which was not developed for capability, but has been used by the Hanwha team, and I really liked the way the bench on platform works. So potentially, again, for industry who's listening in, who are interested in working with New Zealand SMEs and Australian SMEs, potentially the bench on platform is there sitting as an alternative for them. The advantage of ICN, of course, is that it's lots of projects altogether. But that it does mean that we have a bunch of options. And if we create the right data about our companies, we can populate various places more quickly with that. So I think that's a good lead into just a reminder about the Ministry of Defence Industry Portal. I've put a note on the stage chat just as a reminder. So the MOD portal is accessed through the Ministry website. Companies need to register there first, and then they'll get access to the updates to the MOD projects which are going on by domain category. So over the next months, the projects that come out of the information domain, starting to see the results of projects coming off after yesterday's discussions, will go up onto the MOD portal. So what you do have the opportunity there is to start looking at how a quad chart might help you engage. And I think one of the nice things about the MOD portal is that every company interested in a project lists themselves as visible to other industry as being interested in the project, which means the ease by which New Zealand businesses can find the big guys who are going to win the contracts to collaborate with is that bit better. So I think the more we encourage New Zealand businesses and your Australian businesses to come and engage on the portal, the better we'll get that matching piece happening. So,
definitely.
So it's good. So, and just a reminder again, so we have the industry engagement teams from NZDF and MOD in their languages in the session stream, and in the breaks you'll be able to find the teams from there to have a chat and a conversation and talk about connecting up. So now we're good for time, so we're going to give people a chance to grab a fresh cup of coffee. Audra, any closing thoughts from you?
One thing I know that small to medium-sized businesses don't do very well, and that is their business catch-up. So, take the time to learn about your business and put your strategies out and define your strategy, and then put your capture strategy in place on how you're going to pursue that work. And then that should help you decide on which foot you're going to put forward and help you put the right and best foot forward to make that first conversation you have the most influential conversation. Because remember, first impressions count. So, business development and defence is a bit like dating. So if you're going out, girls, if you're meeting a guy, guy meeting girls, how you present on that first date, they're going to form an impression about you. So, your business development activities are no different. So, in my job, Jenny and I, we do speed dating for a living. If you want to nut it down, people say, "What do you do?" I said, "Oh, well, I connect businesses to do work in defence." So, it's a bit like speed dating. I'm just waiting for someone to develop a Tinder app for defence businesses so I can match various capabilities together to be able to bid on opportunities. So, if anyone is a software engineer and they want to come to me and help me develop a defence Tinder app for defence business, speak to me offline.
So I'm guessing that Debbie Howarth from NZDF will be in there with you, because she's been using that analogy for quite a few years now about how can we speedily find the right people to match to the right people in business. So
absolutely.
So that's really good. So I'll wrap up with a thank you to Audra. And I don't think the nice thing about virtual platform is it doesn't matter where you are, but it does matter when it was 6:30 a.m. this morning, because Audра's in Adelaide, where we've got 2.5 hours difference. So, and I particularly loved the sound of the birds in the background as a reminder that it was dawn where you were. So thank you again, for being with us and sharing your wisdom. I'd really encourage people, if you're interested in New Zealand and or Australian exports into Australia to talk to Graham Soloway at Trade and Enterprise. He's on the platform. He's around and about. Send a notice message to him, and let's see if we can keep the networking going. And then when we come to 13, 14 October and part 2, Audra will be working with you as to how we set up some specific streams for Australia and New Zealand businesses to do more of a capability pitch to each other so that we can see who might work together to then bid into New Zealand projects and also Australian projects. So watch this space. We'll keep working together to support industry in both of our countries because together we can do this. So,
Great.
Thank you, Audra.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jenny, and I'll see you later.